There are moments in life when the journey feels endless, the tests too heavy, and the silence too loud. We question ourselves. We stumble, we fall, we ask if we are enough, if we've done enough. And then unexpectedly there comes a quiet whisper, not from the world but from above, a still voice that says, this isn't about perfection. It's not about never making mistakes or always having the right answers. It's about the process, the struggle, the courage to keep going when quitting seemed easier. It's about those nights you prayed through tears, not knowing if your words were even being heard. It's about your decision to show up anyway, to love even when your heart was breaking, to forgive even when you were still bleeding, to believe even when doubt clung to your soul. God saw all of it, not just the outward success, but the internal battles, the ones no one else knew about, the thoughts you had to wrestle with, the forgiveness you had to offer silently, the dreams you kept nurturing, even when reality told you to give up. Every moment you chose integrity over convenience. Every time you chose faith over fear. Every quiet sacrifice you made when no one was watching. This is not the kind of exam marked by grades or applause. It's a test of character, of endurance, of heart. And God, who sees what no one else sees, now declares you've passed, not because you never struggled, but because you never stopped trying. Not because you were always strong, but because you let Him carry you when you were weak. Let that sink in. This isn't the end. This is the confirmation that everything you've gone through has meaning, that your journey wasn't in vain, that your story is still unfolding, but the part you've just walked through, yes, that part was victorious. So walk forward with peace. Let go of the shame, the doubt, the fear. God said your past, that's the final word. It's not about perfection, but perseverance. That simple truth carries a weight that many people overlook in their pursuit of acceptance, success, and validation. We live in a world that constantly measures us by outcomes, by how polished we appear, how flawless our results are, how many accomplishments we can stack in front of others. But God operates on a different scale entirely. His gaze goes deeper, beyond the surface, beyond the resume and the reputation, into the core of who we are when no one else is looking. God never asked us to be perfect. He never required a spotless record or a life without errors. If He had, none of us would qualify. The reality is life brings storms. It brings setbacks. There are times we fall short, moments we act out of fear rather than faith, and days when our best effort feels like it still isn't enough. Yet in all of that, God looks for something else entirely. He looks for perseverance, the kind of quiet strength that refuses to quit even when everything in you wants to give up. The kind of faith that keeps whispering, I believe, even when nothing around you makes sense. To persevere is to rise again and again, is to get up with scraped knees and a bruised heart, to face a world that doesn't always reward integrity or kindness and choose to keep going anyway. And that is what moves God's heart. He is not tallying your missteps or keeping a checklist of how many times you failed. He sees the courage it takes to stand up after falling. He honors the effort of someone who chooses to believe again, love again, try again. Despite disappointment, despite rejection, despite exhaustion. Think about the people God used throughout Scripture. None of them were perfect. Moses doubted himself. David failed more than once. Peter denied Christ. Paul had a past full of violence. Yet all of them were used powerfully, not because they were flawless, but because they kept coming back. They trusted God enough to let Him shape their brokenness into something holy. They let their scars speak of redemption, not shame. That is perseverance. And that is where God blesses. God is not impressed by polished appearances. He is moved by honesty, by the soul that says, I don't have it all together, but I'm still here. The world may call that weakness, but in heaven's eyes it is strength. It is victory. There is a sacred power in the decision to remain faithful when life makes it hard to be. And every time you do that, every time you stay in the fight, even when you're tired and afraid, you're showing God what He already knows. You're not giving up. Some of your greatest growth happened in the moments when no one was watching. The quiet prayers in your room, when you didn't even have the words. The small decisions to do the right thing when no one would have blamed you for giving in. The times you forgave, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary for your soul to heal. These things might never make headlines. They might not get noticed by the people around you, but heaven sees. God sees. And He says, well done. When God says you've passed the final exam, it's not a result of acing every test or never missing a step. It's a declaration that through the fire, through the trials, through every heartbreak and every battle, you remained, you endured. And that endurance, that faithful perseverance, is what heaven celebrates. It means you've grown stronger in your faith, deeper in your love, and clearer in your purpose. This message should set you free from the pressure to perform, from the guilt of not having it all figured out, from the comparison that steals your peace. Because what matters to God is not the image you present, but the heart you protect. He's not asking you to be perfect. He's asking you to stay close, to trust Him in the process, to get back up every time life knocks you down. That's what perseverance looks like. And that's what it means to pass the test. So breathe. Let go of the burden of perfection. Let go of the belief that your worth is measured by your achievements. You've already won by not walking away. You've already passed by refusing to quit. God sees it. He knows how hard it was, how much it cost you, how long you've waited, and still you showed up. Still you prayed. Still you believed. That is more than enough. You didn't have to be perfect to pass. You just had to keep going. And you did. That's why God is saying now, with the full authority of heaven, you've passed the final exam. Not because of what the world saw, but because of what He saw, your perseverance. God sees what others don't. That one truth can bring comfort in the loneliest seasons and strength in the most misunderstood moments. We live in a world that's often quick to judge, quick to categorize, and even quicker to overlook. People see what is on the surface, your words, your actions, your outward expressions. They see your social image, your performance, your highlight reel. But God sees deeper. He sees the heart. He sees the things that never make it into conversation. The parts of your story no one else even knows exist. People might see your smile and think everything is fine, unaware of the inner battles you're facing just to get through the day. They might see your success and assume life is easy for you, not knowing the nights you cried yourself to sleep or the years you waited in silence and faith. They may see your discipline and label you strong, not realizing the strength was born from seasons of brokenness, pain, and prayers whispered in the dark. God sees all of it. He doesn't miss a thing. That unseen space, the space where your struggles live quietly, where your sacrifices go unnoticed, where your faith grows in the absence of applause, is where God is most present. He's there when you choose to forgive without ever receiving an apology. He's there when you keep showing up for others, even while you're silently hurting. He's there when you make the hard choices to walk in integrity, even when no one would blame you for doing otherwise. And He sees every act of kindness, every moment of self-control, every ounce of perseverance that others might never recognize. The world often mistakes visibility for value. If people don't see it, they assume it didn't happen. If your progress isn't loud, they assume you're standing still. But God's measuring tape is different. He sees the inner growth, the humility that replaced pride, the peace that took the place of anxiety, the quiet surrender that came after wrestling with doubt. He sees every step forward, no matter how small, and he treasures each one. You don't need to perform for him. You don't need to prove your worth to him. You are already known. You are already seen. There are sacrifices you made that no one will ever thank you for. Choices you made that cost you deeply. Things you gave up, not because you had to, but because your heart was aligned with something higher. Those things may not gain you recognition on earth, but they are precious in heaven. Every tear, every act of obedience, every hidden battle you fought with courage, they are written on the pages of your life as God sees it. And his record is the one that matters most. It's easy to feel unseen in a world that often overlooks quiet strength and values loud success. To him. The truth is, God's eyes never left you when no one else clapped. You were actually most visible to him. You have been seen the entire time, even in the silence. And that is what sets God apart. He is not distracted by appearance. He is not impressed by masks. He is drawn to honesty. He delights in the authentic cry of your heart, in the quiet trust you place in him when everything feels uncertain. He knows the real you, not just the version others interpret through their own limited lens, but the full depth of your story, your character, your intentions, and your desires. He knows your beginning and your becoming. He understands not just what you do, but why you do it. That level of knowing is rare. That level of intimacy is sacred. So if you ever feel like your efforts are going unnoticed, remember that you're seen by the only one whose sight is complete. When you're tempted to give up because others don't understand what you're going through, remember that God does. He hasn't missed a single moment. And every one of those things matters deeply to him. Let this be your peace. You don't have to be noticed to be valued. You don't have to be recognized to be rewarded. The unseen things often carry the greatest weight in the kingdom of God. Your faithfulness, your endurance, your humility. These are the treasures heaven counts. And in time, what is hidden will be revealed. Not in the way the world rewards success, but in the way God honors faith. You don't need the world to understand your journey. You only need to trust that the one who sees it all is also the one who holds it all, and he has never, not even once, looked away. Every trial had purpose. It may not have felt that way when you were in the middle of it, when the pain seemed endless and the questions had no answers, but nothing you went through was wasted. Every battle you fought, every tear you cried, every night you laid awake trying to make sense of your situation, it all had meaning. It was part of something bigger than the pain itself. It was shaping you, growing you, refining you, preparing you for something you couldn't yet see. Sometimes we look at our past and wonder why certain things had to happen the way they did. We question the timing, the people we lost, the doors that closed, and the dreams that seemed to shatter in our hands. But from God's perspective, none of it was random. Every season, even the ones filled with heartbreak, was allowed for a reason. Even when it felt like everything was falling apart, something deeper was coming together within you. Something eternal. Trials have a way of revealing who we are, but even more, they reveal who God is. When everything else is stripped away, comfort, control, clarity, we come face to face with our need for him. And in that place of desperation, we often discover a closeness with God that we might have missed otherwise. The very things that felt like they were breaking us, that closeness, that dependency becomes the foundation for unshakable faith. You may not see the full picture now. You may still be carrying wounds from the fight, scars from the struggle, but look closer. You're not the same person you were before the trial. You're wiser now. You're softer in some ways and stronger in others. You're more compassionate because you know what it feels like to hurt. You're more patient because you've had to wait. You've grown, even if the growth came in silence, even if no one else saw it happening. God saw, and he knew exactly what he was doing. It's easy to wander life without hardship, to wish away the pain and ask for only smooth roads. But growth rarely happens in comfort. Most of our deepest transformation happens in the fire. And though the fire hurts, it also purifies. It refines. Just like gold is refined through intense heat, your character, your faith, and your calling were refined through your trials. There were days you felt forgotten, moments when the silence from heaven felt unbearable. But even in those moments, God was working. Sometimes his greatest work is done in silence. When it seems like nothing is happening, that's often when the most important changes are taking place. Inside you. You were learning to trust even when you couldn't trace his hand. You were learning to walk by faith, not by sight. And that kind of faith is priceless. It's not something you can develop through ease or comfort. It's earned in the trenches of trial and held tightly when everything else is slipping away. Some of the most powerful things God will do through your life will come from the hardest chapters of your story. The things you thought would break you will become the things that bless others. Your pain will become someone else's hope. Your survival will be someone else's strength. That's how God works. He doesn't waste anything, not your waiting, not your weeping, not your wondering. Every bit of it becomes part of the testimony he is writing with your life. You may never fully understand why some things happened the way they did, but you can rest in the truth that they had purpose. You can trust that the God who allowed the trial is the same God who brings beauty from ashes, joy from mourning, strength from weakness. He is a redeemer. He restores, he rebuilds, and in his hands, even the most painful seasons become stepping stones to greater things. So don't discount your journey. Don't look back and regret thinking it was all just wasted time and unnecessary pain. Nothing was wasted. Every lonely night, every difficult decision, every ounce of strength it took to keep going, it all mattered. It all had purpose. God used it to mold you, to prepare you, to deepen you. He used it to strip away what couldn't stay and make room for what he was always trying to give you. You may have felt like you were being tested, and you were. But it wasn't a test to see if you would fail. It was a test to prove what God already knew about you, that you would make it through, that you would come out stronger, that you would hold on to hope, even when everything around you told you to let go. And because you did, you now carry a strength that isn't shaken by circumstance, a faith that is real, a heart that is still beating, still believing, still open to the future God has prepared for you. Every trial had purpose, and you passed through it with more than just survival. You came out of it with purpose too. Faith over fear is always a victory. It may not feel like a dramatic win in the moment. It might not come with applause, trophies, or visible signs of success. But every time you chose faith instead of fear, no matter how small or quiet that choice seemed, you were growing. You were winning a battle that most people couldn't even see. And that invisible victory is one of the most powerful kinds there is, because it's rooted deep in the soul, where real transformation begins. Fear is loud. It shows up in the middle of the night with worst-case scenarios and doubt. It whispers lies that you're not strong enough, not worthy enough, not capable enough. It tells you to protect yourself, to close your heart, to expect the worst so you won't be disappointed. Fear urges you to withdraw, to stay safe, to avoid risk and pain. But faith speaks differently. Faith doesn't always shout, but it stands firm. It says, even if I don't understand, I will trust. It says, even if this hurts, I will keep loving. It says, even if I've been let down before, I will hope again. You may not have realized it at the time, but those decisions to forgive when anger would have been easier, to believe when doubt was louder, to love again after being broken, those were moments of victory. Each time you chose to walk forward instead of freeze in fear, you passed another test. And maybe there were times when you were scared while still choosing faith. That's okay. Faith doesn't always cancel fear immediately. Sometimes faith and fear walk side by side. But you kept choosing to listen to faith, to lean into what was unseen, to trust what God was doing, even when you had no evidence yet. That is courage. That is growth. And growth is the real marker of progress. Not how polished your life looks or how perfect your journey has been. Growth shows up in your quiet responses, in the way you pause before reacting, in your ability to sit in uncomfortable places without running, in the way you offer grace to others because you know how much grace has been given to you. Growth is when your heart opens wider after pain instead of closing off. When you no longer let fear dictate your direction, but let faith guide you into deeper waters. Growth is choosing to stay present when it's easier to check out. It's continuing to pray even when it feels like nothing is changing. Sometimes the greatest victories happen internally. Nobody else may notice the shift, but God does. He sees when you fight off bitterness and choose peace. He sees when you show up to serve while your own heart is breaking. He sees when you stay faithful to the assignment He gave you even when the rewards aren't visible yet. And He counts that faith as victory, not just because of the outcome, but because of what it cost you to trust Him in the dark. Faith doesn't always mean things will turn out the way you hoped. It doesn't guarantee comfort or clarity, but it does guarantee that you'll grow in the process. It shapes who you're becoming. It turns suffering into strength. It changes how you see the world and how you respond to it. Every time you choose faith, you're declaring that fear will not have the final word. You're stepping into a truth that's deeper than circumstances and greater than emotion. There were moments in your story when you had every reason to give up, when it would have made sense to shut down, to walk away, to protect yourself at all costs. But something in you, a flicker of belief, a memory of who God has been, a whisper of hope, kept you going. And even if your steps were small, they were steps forward. Even if your prayers were quiet, they were still heard. Even if your belief wavered, your choice to return to faith again and again is what matters most. It's easy to talk about faith when everything is going well, but real faith is forged in hardship. It's tested when prayers aren't answered right away. It's refined in waiting rooms, in valleys, in heartbreak, in loss. And when you walk through those places and still choose to believe in the goodness of God, that is proof that your faith isn't shallow. It's rooted, it's real. That kind of faith moves mountains, not always around you, but within you. Fear may have knocked on your door many times, but faith kept answering. That is why you're still here. That is why you've grown. That is why, even with wounds and weariness, you're stronger than before. And that strength didn't come from avoiding fear. It came from facing it and choosing to trust anyway. So yes, faith over fear is always a victory. Not because life becomes easier, but because your spirit becomes braver. Not because the road is smooth, but because your steps are steadier. And every time you chose to keep walking, even with trembling hands and a hopeful heart, you were passing a test that only God fully understood and is proud of how far you've come. You were never alone. Even when it felt like the silence was too heavy, when the tears wouldn't stop, when you couldn't find the words to pray, you were never abandoned. It's hard to feel God's presence sometimes when the pain is loud and the answers are few. It's easy to believe that He's far away when everything seems to be falling apart and nothing makes sense. But even in those dark, quiet spaces, He was right there, closer than breath, closer than your next thought, watching, holding, carrying you through moments you didn't think you could survive. There were times when you felt like your strength had run out, and it had, but that's when His grace stepped in. That's when something deeper than your own willpower began to sustain you. That strength you felt that got you through the day, that was Him. That peace that showed up in your heart out of nowhere during a storm, that was Him. The moments you didn't think you'd make it, but somehow you kept going, that was Him. It wasn't just your resilience, it was His presence, quiet and faithful, doing for you what you couldn't do for yourself. We often look for God in the miraculous, in the big and the bold. But sometimes God reveals Himself in the smallest things. The gentle reminder to keep going, the comforting word from a friend, the unexplainable calm during chaos. Those were not coincidences. Those were signs of His nearness. Proof that He saw you, heard you, and chose to walk through it all with you. Even when you couldn't feel Him, He never left your side. He never looked away, He never gave up on you. In our weakness, His strength is made perfect. That's not just a verse to memorize. It's a truth that becomes real when life gets too heavy. When you're exhausted from trying to hold everything together and your hands are trembling from the weight, that's where His hands take over. He didn't expect you to carry it all. He didn't expect you to figure it all out on your own. He simply asked you to trust that He was already there, already working, already holding everything that you could. You weren't walking through the fire alone. He was in the fire with you. Every sleepless night, every broken dream, every moment of confusion, He was there. And even though you may not have understood why things happened the way they did, He understood your heartache. He knew what it cost you just to keep showing up. And He honored every single step you took in faith. Every tear you cried in surrender, every breath you drew in hope. You may not have seen Him, but He was always there. Sometimes we confuse God's silence with His absence. But silence isn't the same as abandonment. There were reasons why He didn't answer some prayers the way you wanted. Reasons why certain doors closed. Reasons why things didn't happen on your timeline. But even in the delay, even in the detours, His presence never left. His plan was still unfolding even when it looked like nothing was happening. And the whole time He was walking with you. Not just ahead of you, preparing the way, but beside you, comforting and guiding. When you look back now, you'll see it more clearly. You'll see how you were held through the storm. How you were protected from things you didn't even know could have harmed you. You'll remember the times you felt like giving up and yet something kept you holding on. That something was God. Not just watching you, but sustaining you. Whispering truth to your soul when lies tried to take over. Giving you just enough light for the next step. Just enough strength for the next choice. You were never meant to carry your pain alone. He was always there to shoulder it with you. He was there when you whispered prayers that no one else heard. He was there when your faith felt small, when your hope was thin. He never shamed you for your weakness. He never turned away from your questions. He simply stayed with love that didn't waver and grace that didn't run out. His presence wasn't dependent on your performance. His faithfulness wasn't measured by how strong you appeared. He was simply there because that's who He is. And that truth changes everything. You can move forward now, not with fear, but with confidence that the same God who stood with you in the valley will also lead you to the mountaintop. The same God who held you through the night will rejoice with you in the morning. You're not stepping into your next season alone because He hasn't left you. Not then, not now, not ever. To let that truth settle deep in your soul. You were never alone. Not for a moment. You didn't make it through by accident. You made it through because He was carrying you. And now that you've come this far, you can trust that He'll continue to walk with you every step of the way. This is not the end, it's affirmation. It's a declaration that what you've walked through, what you've endured, what you've learned has meaning. You've reached a turning point not because the journey is over, but because the foundation has been tested and found strong. You've passed through trials, through uncertainty, through long seasons of waiting and wondering, and now God is saying it's time to move forward. Not because you're done, but because you're ready. What you've come through wasn't just for survival. It was for preparation. And God's affirmation now is not just a pat on the back. It's His way of saying, you've been faithful with this chapter. There's something powerful in knowing that God has approved what you've walked through. It means your story wasn't wasted. The delays, the disappointments, the doubts, they weren't signs of failure. They were parts of the process. They shaped you. They carved out space in your life for deeper faith, for more grace, for clarity about who you are and who God is. And now that this chapter is closing, God isn't just moving you on. He's lifting you up. He's putting His seal of approval on the work He's done in you. That approval may not look like fireworks or grand announcements, but in your spirit, you know something has shifted. Something has settled. You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. Affirmation from God is not always loud, but it is undeniable. It speaks to the heart in a way nothing else can. It brings peace that circumstances can't explain. It carries weight that no human validation could ever offer. It's God saying, I see you. I saw every moment, and I'm proud of you. Not because you did everything perfectly, but because you stayed the course, because you didn't quit, because you let Him shape you even when it hurt. You passed not because you had all the right answers, but because you allowed your heart to stay open, your spirit to stay teachable, and your faith to keep breathing. This isn't a graduation out of struggle forever. Life will always have its share of challenges, but what changes is your capacity. You're not the same person you were when you started. You've matured, you've been tested and refined. What once shook you doesn't shake you the same way anymore. What used to cause fear now meets a deeper confidence in God's timing and plan. That's how you know the chapter has closed well, when you can look back without bitterness and forward without fear. That is the fruit of passing the final exam in the school of grace. There's also a new responsibility that comes with this kind of affirmation. It's a commissioning. You're not just stepping away from something, you're stepping into something. Something God has been preparing in the background while He was working on you in the foreground. And now because your heart has been made ready, He can entrust you with more purpose, more influence, more wisdom, more healing for others who are still walking through what you've just come out of. You won't just carry your story, you carry the anointing that came from living it. When God says a chapter is complete, He also opens doors that align with who you become. You won't need to chase opportunities or prove yourself. What's meant for you will begin to come with ease, not because it's easy, but because it fits, because it aligns, because you're in rhythm with God's timing. There's a grace that follows divine affirmation, doors that open, connections that form, peace that follows you even into new and unknown places. That peace is a sign that God is still walking with you, still speaking, still guiding. And that peace comes not from knowing every detail of the future, but from trusting the one who holds it. It's important to recognize the difference between the end of a chapter and the end of the story. Just because something is over doesn't mean everything is. Closure isn't a loss, it's a gift. And in God's hands, closure comes with blessing. It comes with clarity. It comes with the quiet but powerful awareness that you've done what He asked of you. You've walked faithfully, you've trusted Him, and now He's leading you into what's next. Not because you've earned it, but because you're ready to carry it. So receive that affirmation, let it settle deep into your heart. Let it remind you that you are seen, you are known, and you are prepared. This chapter of refining, of learning, of pressing through, it's done. And you did not come through it empty, you came through it full. Full of lessons, full of strength, full of deeper understanding of who God is and who you are in Him. That fullness will now flow into the next thing He has for you. No, this is not the end. This is affirmation. And with God's affirmation, you are not just released, you're launched forward, onward, with purpose, with strength, and with the confidence that whatever comes next, you won't be facing it alone. You never were. And you never will be.